Hello everyone. It's a time again for a tip of the week. This week, let's talk about how to create rough texture in watercolor. Rough textures here, like that, are very useful in watercolor painting. However, seems it's a little bit harder to achieve compared to the softer and hard-edged textures. So I'm going to give you some insights on how I do these in my painting, and share with you, see if you can use those tips for your own painting. Then you wanted to also check out whether that first wash is dry enough. So that's pretty easy. You can tap it with your finger or just look at the paper. The second thing is a little harder, is you have to figure out how much water is in your brush. Let's say this is a little a small mop type of brush. It's hard to achieve a dry texture. See, I just dip into the water. If you can see, there's a lot of water in here. So if it's very difficult to achieve dry texture with watery brush, especially when you start mixing the paints and in hope to have enough darkness of the paper of the paints into your painting, that time it's very easy to forget how much water is still in this brush. See, the belly of this brush is pretty fat. What I usually do is I have a sponge here. You can see I would get rid of some of the water and the paints in the bottom of the brush belly, and that will help to reduce the amount of the water and achieve a better, thicker paints in my paint, or just simply make the brush a lot drier. Let's say if I wanted to paint some palm trees, so I mixed some green colors here. And this green color is pretty thick, and I got rid of the majority of the water inside of my brush. Now, with the dry surface, it's pretty easy to achieve. Now you see it. You see the dry texture is coming easily, and I didn't try too much. So then on to another one. Simply is because this is pretty much dry on dry, and I have a very dry brush, not much moisture in there, and I have a dry surface. And the third thing here is, you probably already noticed, I'm moving my brush with an angle and sometimes push it. So that's the third component if you want to successfully achieve the dry brush look. So what I'm doing is I've been pushing the brush this way or pull this way. Let's say if we wanted to create the trunk part of the palm tree. So I would do this way. Instead of using the tip of the brush more vertically towards the paper, what I use is a sideway, and also I'm dragging through the surface. So the hair of the brush is actually go sometimes against the paper. So that's easily, help you to create the rough texture in this way. So now see, 3 components. It's less water on the paper, less water inside the brush, and move the brush sideways. Use the side belly. Remember, we already move out of the water from the belly. And so that's pretty much the first palm tree that we can add there. And let's add something on the side of it. You see that the brush right now is pretty dry. Okay, I'm washing off that. Sometimes you need a lighter color, but still rough texture, it can still be achieved with a lighter color. Let's see if you can see it. Yeah, lighter color. And the same concept was a dry surface and less water in the brush. So let's say I'm going to create this beard thing for a little warm color for this palm tree. And now you see the rough texture, it's still created with even a lighter color. Warm up a little bit. And I'm over the first dry brush stroke for the trunk of the palm tree, but you can still see the original dried texture underneath it, and which creates much more interesting depths for the palm tree. So now let's add a few. So same concept when you want to achieve those, especially with elegant brush strokes, you really don't want a very puffy brush. Get the brush a little bit drier and control the water. And let's say we're adding a little more of the palm tree here, little few in the distance. And it is almost impossible if you want to do this with completely washed, soakingly wet brush to achieve this. If you change a little bit, like what I'm doing, you know, use less water, but with a dry paper, it's quite easy. Okay. And so for the land or the dirt part or the distance mountains, it's the same thing. You can use the side of the brush and less water and push or pull with that brush, and those textures, the rough textures, are easily created. So that's pretty much of this tip. 3 things: dry surface or drier surface, drier brush, and the push and pull. Use the side way of the brush. You can create rough, dry texture easily. Okay, I think that's pretty much the tip of the day, the tip of the week. Hope you can try this one.